Welcome to Jesus and Power, the book of Revelation. This is your group video for the week, and this is episode 1, Cornhole Competition. I am here with Clay Erickson.
That's me.
And Clay, you're usually behind the camera.
Yes.
And so what does it feel like being on the other side?
It feels strange.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Now, you've written down some questions to ask me about Revelation.
Yes, I have.
And we're going to talk about them while also playing cornhole.
That's true.
How do you feel about that?
I think that the conditions are not ideal, but I'm feeling strong. So.
Okay. Now, one of the reasons why we thought we would play a game while talking about this is when God talked to Moses about teaching the people about the Bible, he said, talk about it in your everyday life. And I love cornhole, and this is like everyday life for me. So,
Yes.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, so let's get a few throws in, and then you can ask me a question. So
Sounds
what
good.
is your first question?
Also, in your group, just go ahead and vote on who you think is going to win at the end of this.
Okay.
At the end of this competition.
How many of you think Clay's going to win?
I do.
Okay. All right, and how many think I'm going to win? Okay. All right. I know who you are. Okay. All right, so what's your first question?
Why are we studying Revelation?
Okay, all right. So we're studying Revelation for the very reason that the first Christians studied Revelation. They needed to be encouraged and given hope during some difficult times. For many of them, they'd kind of lost sight of Jesus and his power and his mission in the world, and they were discouraged by some of the world events that were happening and also the persecution they were going through for being Christians. And so that's why.
Yeah.
Let's see what you got.
Rough start. David wants to change his vote.
Get in. Okay, all right. That's the first question. What do you got? What's the second question?
What is a revelation?
Okay, so a revelation is a sudden, unexpected revealing of truth. And it's something that's always been there,
Yeah.
but you don't see it. And it's one of the reasons why the book of Revelation is visual. Jesus doesn't say to John, hey, listen. He says, hey, come and see. And so it's a view. It's like he's being transported in an experience of seeing from heaven's perspective what's happening on earth. And we get lost often in what's going on in earth and some of the struggles, some of the difficult news, or maybe even some of the joys of life, but we get kind of caught up in it. And we need to see what God sees. And what John sees is this, is that God's in charge.
Yeah.
His kingdom is coming. And that what he did with Jesus on Easter, raising him from the dead, that he's actually going to make this whole world healed in one. So in a world that you had with Eden, God's space and our space were together.
Yeah.
With the rebellion, they get split. Okay? This story of Revelation is how they come back together and united, almost like a wedding. And it's how Revelation really ends as a bride, beautifully dressed, earth comes and is rejoined with heaven. Pretty cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right, so do I go first this time?
Yeah, I think that's you.
Okay, so what do we got?
Who wrote Revelation and who did he write it to?
Okay, so John wrote Revelation. Most people believe it's that John that was a disciple of Jesus, became an apostle, then a pastor, then a bishop. He, according to church tradition, was boiled alive, didn't die. Which is interesting because Jesus said to Peter, there's that moment where they have that conversation and Peter's like, hey, Jesus says, you're gonna like die, like be martyred. And then he says, what about John? And Jesus says, like, what does it matter to you if he lives forever?
Yeah.
So there were some people that thought John would live forever until Jesus returned. And I just think those two guys were super competitive.
Yeah.
Imagine them playing cornhole.
Exactly.
So it could also be maybe another person named John, because the book of Revelation and John, the gospel, they seem to be very different. So it is possible it's a different person, or it's the same person. They're writing in different genres of literature and also at different times. So I don't like. How old are you now?
21.
21.
Yeah.
21. Married and
With the baby.
what's your baby's name?
Isla.
Isla. Okay. So if you wrote something 10 years ago, would it look different than today?
Correct. Yeah, I would assume so.
Because he was 11. So
Yes.
okay, what's the score?
Score? 3-0.
Okay.
Go
Time for the
Clay!
comeback.
Go Clay!
Okay. Who's is it me?
Yeah, it's you.
Okay. All right.
3-0.
You don't have to take it easy on him.
I want to hear some cheering, okay?
How about we just play?
Get off me. Oh. Okay, so you got a point on that, right?
Yeah.
I got 5 and you got how many?
They'll tally. I want
okay.
to know where was John and where were the people that he was writing to.
Okay, John was on the prison island of Patmos, and so I'll just show you a map. And he's writing to 7 churches. They're all in Asia Minor, and they are all churches that he is actually the overseer of, the bishop of. It's like it's a multi-site church with different campuses, really kind of more house churches.
Yeah.
And he is providing spiritual leadership, so they're real people. He knows them. And if you actually did like a mail route, the letters are written from chapters 2 and 3, like almost in progression of just like basically doing a semicircle.
Yeah.
It's exactly the route you would take.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
What else
that's
you got?
interesting. When was it written and what was happening at the time?
Okay, so for the most part, we believe it's written towards the end of the 1st century.
Okay.
And if you look at, here's some things that had already happened. One is this: Jerusalem had been totally destroyed. And so there's no more temple worship. Secondly is this: they'd had a natural disaster about 10 years earlier with Mount Vesuvius blowing up. And some of that imagery, I think, is used in Revelation. During this time, Domitian is the emperor, and he's an authoritarian trying to actually really kind of leverage up the power of the emperor and really push down the power of the Senate. I know it's hard to believe that could happen. Yeah. And so during this time, he's really insisting upon more of the tradition of Rome, and that there's worship of the Roman way, the Roman gods, the Roman emperor. And there's even a statue he has that Christians, everyone is to once a year worship the statue. It's emperor worship. And the people who won't participate are told that they are going to be sentenced to death. And so Christians have to decide what they're going to do. And you can imagine in a season like that, you would need some hope.
Yeah.
And you could feel powerless.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Let's
Let's throw some more.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I think I'd start on this one.
Okay.
Found it. He
Were
found
you
it.
like kind of like playing
I'm
with
hustling
me?
you. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
All right. Final question.
This is the final question.
Yes.
I'm behind.
Well, and then we'll do a round.
Okay,
All right. How should we read Revelation?
Okay. Well, I think the way you read Revelation is the way that John lays it out in the first chapter. Is I think the first thing you do is you have to look at the context that it's written in.
Yeah.
And so what was going on in that time. And then what John does is he starts with Jesus. This is a revelation from Jesus. It's about Jesus. And you'll notice the word revelation singular, not plural. So often people are like, oh, I like the book of Revelations.
Yeah.
And you're like, I mean, I would never just like try to correct everybody, but
Yeah.
it's a revelation of Jesus, not a bunch of revelations that we can kind of add to.
Yeah.
And so what was your question again?
How should we read Revelation?
Okay, so you start with Jesus.
Yes.
Who is Jesus? What is Jesus doing in this world?
Okay.
And then you'll notice he flips to then who are we as the church?
Yeah.
And so this is who we are. We're loved by God. We're forgiven. We're freed. We're a kingdom of priests. We're the hands and feet of Jesus. And so reading this book is going to do a couple things. One is if you have anxiety about what's going on in our world today, it's going to free you from that. Some of you have anger about what's happening, and you're getting like all your conversations are our earth conversations.
Yeah.
And God wants you to have heaven and earth conversations.
Yeah.
And so I think you're gonna in your heart feel some peace that God's in charge, His
Yeah.
kingdom's coming, and then it's a participation with what He's doing. I think there's a part in the book where John is invited to come up here and worship Jesus and see Him on a throne, and that kind of like frees him up for all the tribulation that they're gonna go through.
Yeah.
That this ends well, it ends in glory. And I think as Christians, as followers of Jesus in our world today, we need that same hope and that same passion and that same power.
Good.
That's it.
All right. Final
Yeah,
round.
final round.
What's the score?
4-3.
4-3. All right. Final round.
I guess it's your throw.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Wait, hang on. Before you throw it, what?
I literally can't win,
Wes
right?
will
It's
win
3 to
unless he
4.
makes it on.
Okay.
If you don't make it in, Wes. Oh! So you have to land it to tie, make it to win.
I need you right now,
You have to make
praying for your pastor.
You have to make it
What do I have to do? I have to make
You
it?
have to
You have
make
to
it
make
in
it
because
in.
you're 2 points,
On
you're
the
2
top.
points behind.
Believe in you, Clay.
Oh! Congratulations,
There it is.
Clay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good match.
Yes.
We'll
very
see you
good.
next week.
You voted right.